Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We are excited to bring you this webinar on the Perpetual Wealth Code. We want to introduce to you some concepts, whether you have heard them before or not, can get you guaranteed growth on your money, access to your money, the right to manage your money, and the opportunity to build equity in what it is that you're saving or investing in. It's called the Perpetual Wealth Code. And I have Dad, Dr. Tom McPhee. I'm one of his sons, Ben McPhee, and one of my brothers on the line today, John McPhee. And they're going to be sharing with you some examples, some things that you need to know to grow your savings safely. Okay, safely is a big thing because a lot of people, when they go to get growth on their savings, they expose themselves to tremendous risk that could take everything they own. If you're going to grow guaranteed wealth, you want guarantees that your money is going to grow without losing it. You want to have the availability of your money so that you can use it to get those guarantees. You want to have the right to manage your money, and you want to be able to build equity in what it is that you're saving or investing in. So, Dad, would you start today with the Perpetual Wealth Code?
Well, absolutely. It's a privilege to present the basis of what makes the Perpetual Wealth Code work. It's a proven savings system that keeps your money safely growing and under your control, which is very important, as we're going to find out today. Savings is such a critical link to exceptional debt and money management because it gives you the control, puts you in the driver's seat, Ben. And we've helped so many clients that didn't have any savings at all when we started with them. And without that savings, there is no way to change their position.
Oh, absolutely. I agree.
And I'm thinking of several clients right now, but I know you have a specific story about
I was
one.
just thinking of, I'm going to just call him Dr. Allen. I changed the name, obviously, for privacy reasons, but he had a fairly large family, had 6 children. He was saving nothing. He was in one of the cold northern states, and so he had a propane tank in his yard that they would heat from in the wintertime. And he never could afford to fill the propane tank completely full. So he would fill it partially full, as much as he could. They would heat on that, and then they would have the truck come out again. Well, the more times the truck comes out, the more service charges there are on that trip. So he was paying all those things because he could never afford to fill his tank completely up. And the first time you talked to him, you told him, basically, we can't do anything unless you learn how to save. But you taught him the 10-20-70 rule, which makes savings easy, because it fits it into what you're already doing. His excitement when he found out that he could actually save money was just through the roof. I remember the call the first time he filled his propane tank completely full and saved, I don't remember how many hundreds of dollars in service charges. And the tank was going to last a long time. It was extra money he could save because he hadn't had to spend it in service charges. Fast forward to today, he's nowhere close to where he was then. He's been able to take his family on their first ever family vacation. And like you said, it all boils down to the foundation of savings, which you're talking about right here.
It does. In fact, Robert Shiller, the Nobel Prize winner in economics and the professor of economics at Yale, says that if there's one thing that America needs to do more of, and that is save. You know, the average American, he says, saves 4 to 5% of their income and earns a 0% rate of return on it over their lifetime. And we're going to see some of the reasons why today that is. But we can mention them right here: taxes, fees, penalties, and inflation. And so He says the solution to that is to save more. But we've got to save very carefully. You know, we first have to understand that debt is not a dirty 4-letter word. Warren Buffett and other people that have made tremendous amounts of money says the best way to create wealth is to leverage other people's money. And so debt is not a dirty 4-letter word. It can become an asset if we manage it properly. Let's take a look at how we could do that. Okay, if we are on a plan here to save money, and we put aside $50,000 after 10 years at just 2%, that $50,000 is going to be $61,059. After 35 years, we can see at just 2%, that $50,000 could more than double. It could be $100,628 just on simple compounding interest. Now, let's say that we need to make a purchase. Do we throw away our savings or cash them out and use that money
2%?
like I did for so many years? Do we surrender that 2% and pay cash for things? Well, if we do, here's the news that was very sad for me to learn. I could have paid 4% by borrowing someone else's money then, and I would have ended up making more money than if I'd have spent my own $50,000. And when we look at that, we can take that at 10, 15, 20, 35 years here. We can see the difference of what would have happened if I would have saved my $50,000 and used someone else's.
So even though you're paying a higher effective rate, the 4%, twice the rate actually, because it's compounding on ever decreasing balance on the loan, you actually have more earned at 2% that's compounding on an increasing balance.
That's right. So when we look at what we lost because we didn't have savings here, if we don't save first and just borrow money, then we're going to lose the $11,000, obviously, because we don't have $50,000 to earn 2% on.
Right.
But if we do have the $50,000 to earn 2% and we cash it in and throw it away, we lose not only the $312,000, but we also lose the $11,000. And that means our total loss can be huge.
Mm-hmm.
And when we look at this in a percentage basis of the original $50,000, those percentages are staggering.
116.5%.
And we're talking about a lifetime here, basically.
Right.
So how many people listening today would like to tap into that kind of guaranteed savings? Because if you can have that kind of guaranteed savings, you can afford to leverage other people's money. And I'm thinking of one of our clients that understood this and has done it very well.
Oh, yes, in another client in the northern states, actually. And these people, they were exposing themselves to a lot of market risk because, like I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, when people search for growth on their money, they're often putting it in a place that it's not guaranteed growth. And the problem with that is that you can lose everything you own or everything you've saved for all your life, and then you don't have the $50,000 in this case to earn even just a little bit of 2%, you know? So if you're going for those big gains and exposing yourself to a lot of risk, you can lose it all. That does not spell peace of mind. Can you imagine waking up from day to day wondering, okay, what's happening today? Have I lost it? Have I made it? Has it stayed the same, gone down a little bit, gone up a little bit?
It's worse than a roller coaster ride because it's not fun.
Right. And that's kind of the situation these people were in.
Yes.
Because they had exposed themselves to so much risk. And was it right after 2008 or right before? Do you recall?
It was right after 2008, and they literally had lost all the gains that they'd had on their money, and they were starting to lose their principal as well.
Yeah, and so what we were able to do is help them get the money they still had and roll it over in a tax-preferred way so that they could take advantage of something that was steady but guaranteed. The neat thing about that is it was also available to them, so they could access it when their kids needed to go to college.
Yes.
And they borrowed several $100,000 for tuition for their children.
And now instead of having to pay some third party back 8% on a student loan, they can pay themselves at a nice, comfortable, affordable rate, and no one's threatening them for not paying their student loan. And they're not going to default on it because they're paying it back to themselves.
And they have equity in what they purchased.
Yes, and they're still earning dividends on all the money that they paid into that and produced into what we call the ideal tool for the participating wealth code, which is participating
whole life insurance. Right.
Mm-hmm. So obviously, An exceptional debt and money management system like the Perpetual Wealth Code has to begin with savings. We can see that now.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
But you mentioned here about, a special savings, and I actually labeled it participating whole life insurance because, we could borrow from our 401k to go to school.
Sure.
We could borrow from our IRA. We could borrow from a Roth, and all,
If they let you.
If they let
Right.
us, if it's within the guidelines. We could borrow from third parties, but that interest then compounds against you. So let's take a look here and see which is more important. Saving more money or getting guarantees? Or maybe neither one. So let's take a look here. This is an example of someone getting a guaranteed 4% internal rate of return, and they're saving $10,000. Someone else is saying, well, I'm young, I've got a lot of time to make it up, and I've got a lot of things I want to do and places I want to see and people I want to meet, so I'm only going to save $5,000, but I know a friend down here that will give me 8%. Now, I know it's not guaranteed, but I'm going to take the risk of earning 8% instead of having to forfeit and work harder to save more money.
Okay.
And as we look at this, we can see that the 4% earnings on a $10,000, it takes years, almost 18 years, before the higher interest non-guaranteed account matches it. Now, this is all fine and good, okay? If you want to assume the risk, I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just here telling you what can happen. Statistically, though, we have to look at if your money's in a non-guaranteed account, like in an investment, okay, this is the historical record of market corrections that we have to realize. You may not get 8% every year. What happens if you lose 30 or 40%?
Right.
And those could happen several times during your lifetime of savings, couldn't they?
Oh, absolutely. And just because something happens every 25 years doesn't mean you have 25 years before it happens. You might get in when there's 3 years left.
Well, it's like a 100-year flood. Just because it's a 100-year flood doesn't mean it happens every 100th year. You can
Right.
happen two right back to back, and that has happened very frequently in the market. Okay, so what we have to look here is, what if there's a mild correction in year 10 of your savings plan? Now it takes 35 years to catch up.
That's incredible.
Okay, what happens if there's a second correction in year 22 or of your savings plan? Okay, now you may never catch up in your lifetime. And this is what people are not being told. And this is the importance of realizing the importance of saving more now and making sure that that is in guaranteed savings.
Yes.
So Robert Schiller is absolutely right. We do need to be saving more, but we need to make sure those savings aren't in some speculative market where we could lose the gains that we've made. It's got to be guaranteed. And so what happens here, when we put our money in guaranteed savings, it gives us much more than just our savings. It gives us judgment proofness, perhaps. In many states, life insurance proceeds are judgment proof, and I know you've got a story about that you want to talk about, but it gives us control over our money. It allows us to use the money without losing the growth on our money, and that's the key thing here about the Perpetual Wealth Code. So I know I see you chomping at the bit here to tell that story, so go ahead.
Because even though 401k and IRA offer some sort of, judgment proof, the life insurance, participating whole life insurance, offers some kind of judgment proof in every state. In many states, it is completely judgment proof. So, I mean, this could be a story about one client, two clients, multiple clients, actually. In the case of a divorce, it was able to keep somebody's money, savings, actually, they were using it for savings. It was able to keep their savings safe and completely out of the picture in the divorce proceedings.
Didn't use the growth on it at all.
Exactly. It's still growing, and the courts can't even go there because of the judgment proof. I'm thinking of another fellow in California that was able to use the judgment-proofness of his life insurance to protect himself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it was in a lawsuit, wasn't it?
Yeah, I'm thinking of another one that went bankrupt. I'm thinking of another one that was able to actually tap into their savings, not lose the growth on it, and use that money to hire an attorney to protect them legally. So there's all kinds of ways that using participating whole life insurance protects you when you're saving there versus other financial tools that are out there.
And just real quick on that one too, some people consider hard real estate purchases an asset, but those can still be got to. Life insurance is an asset that's judgment proof in most cases.
That's right, Ben, and that's really important because none of us know the future. I mean, we can plan our ways, but you know, the events of the future kind of dictate to what we have to do. So we want to make sure we keep everybody's opportunities on the table. And so this kind of growth that we're showing here, you shouldn't have to lose just because you're forced to tap into your savings to help you out in a situation. And that's why we use participating life insurance, okay? So keeping control of the money that you've saved allows you to use it, earn more money with it, and keep more of it. And that really is the answer to Robert Shirler's little admonition to all of us. We need to be saving more money if we expect to live those golden years like we're expecting to. And that is why guaranteed savings, Ben, is so critical to excellent debt and money management. If I can leverage my savings, not lose the growth on it, and then become my own creditor,
yes.
So I finance my own debt, now who do I get to pay that interest back to?
Yourself.
And where does the principal go to?
Yourself.
And so isn't that kind of recycling?
It is.
Isn't that what we're
and that's what
to
the world's about right now,
yeah.
Isn't it?
So,
sustainability. And that's why we called it Perpetual when we named it the Perpetual Wealth Code, because it's so sustainable. I'm thinking of a couple clients of ours, again in California, that had the idea to start a business that complemented a business that they were already in. And I don't know if any of you listeners have ever tried to get funding, venture capital, or a bank loan to start a business, but unless there's income, how easy is it? What if you had the money on hand? Well, that's what our clients were able to do because they'd been saving this way for quite some time. They had the money on hand to not only open their store, but expand 3 times once they became profitable. Because what do you know? Their idea was a good idea. Bank wouldn't have thought so, but they did. They expanded their store 3 times. Excellent store in California. Well liked. It was featured in one of the Living Richly newsletters. So those of you that are clients might know about it.
And to the outside world, they have zero debt.
Exactly.
Because it's all leveraged internally.
And what I love about it too is even though they leveraged it, they're still getting that guaranteed growth you were talking about.
You know, I'm thinking of another client that is borrowed hundreds of thousands of dollars from against his life insurance, and has used that to start whole separate businesses and build a second residence for him and his family to participate in. And
see, that's neat.
That's the real wealth that can't be taken away from it. But it all starts with savings. If we don't have that savings, then we're never going to be able to be in a position not to have to pay the interest to somebody else. And that interest to somebody else is this money that you're never going to be used. And if we do save and we save in the wrong spots, then we don't have access to our money, and so we still are forced to use someone else's money. But
right.
When we can have the leverage to use the insurance company's money and pay back what we would pay for somebody else, then we get the opportunity to experience both. And that's really what the Perpetual Wealth Code is all about, is experiencing both.
It is. And even if somebody wants to take on extra risk, let's just say, for example, this Trump bump that we're in, where everybody saw a spike in growth in their IRA, And some of them are wondering, okay, do I take it out now when it's sort of plateaued? Do I hope it continues to go up? Do I wait and see what happens with taxes? Those are decisions that are really, really hard to make. It could happen 2008, could happen again tomorrow, and then that growth would be cut away. Maybe all of it, maybe some of it, maybe more than the growth. But when you have your money here, you have a guaranteed foundation. And so if you want to take on the extra risk, then you can borrow the money, take on the extra risk, and do that kind of thing if you're into it. But the important thing is you never go back to zero. You always have the foundation.
You always have that growth on your savings. And that's
Yes.
what that chart
So
that we pulled
critical.
up is so critical in pointing out, is that without that extra little savings, over a period of 35 years, it's 116% just in these percentages
Yes.
that we gave today. So, I know that John is itching to share his part because he's got a simple method to help people save. It's the method we use with all of our clients and our prospects coming in, because you know what? A lot of people don't understand this, so I want to say it loud and clear. You do not need a participating whole life insurance policy to participate in the Perpetual Wealth Code. Eventually you'll want to get there, I guarantee you, but that's not maybe where you need to start. And so I'm going to change the screen here and let John take over for this next part of the presentation, because he's got a great presentation ready for you to share as well.
All right, John, the platform is yours. Go for it.
All right. Thank you very much, Ben and Dad. That was great. And many people are not implementing the Perpetual Wealth Code 100%. And I think that's sometimes just because they make it harder than it really is. And the Perpetual Wealth Code is not hard at all. It's just different than the way that most people think about managing money. And you're going to see that very clearly. What Ben and Dad covered just a second ago, that wasn't hard. It was very simple concepts about managing money and keeping more of it under your control. It's things that all of us would like to be able to do with our money. We just maybe don't know how. And so that's what we're going to look at with some of on this webinar today. We're going to look at different ways that you can put the Perpetual Wealth Code into action and see those results. So one of the things that you have to consider when you're putting the Perpetual Wealth Code to work is, what is your goal? Because a goal without a plan is just a wish. And I found that quote. I don't know who said it, so we'll attribute it to Anonymous today. Goal without a plan is just a wish. I've also heard it said that dreams are goals, or if you don't have any plans with your goals, then they're just dreams. So one of the things that we want to do with the Perpetual Wealth Code as we're putting it into action in our lives is to keep it simple, because something that's simple is easier to get done than something that you make overly complex. And so keeping it simple is usually the best way to go. And that reminds me of a story that my mom tells. Her grandfather, my great-grandfather, was his name was Jack Hanna. He was a director for a lot of the Donald Duck cartoons that Walt Disney used to put out. If you Google some of the old Donald Duck cartoons online, you pull them up, you'll see his name as the director on many of those. And so he had a studio in his house in California, and he would paint pictures in that studio. Well, my mom liked to paint as well, and so when her and Dad were first married, she would paint on the kitchen table. And she tells the story how some of her family members were shocked that she could paint, she could make artwork without a studio. She didn't need a studio to do it. And that's what we have to think about as we're applying the Perpetual Wealth Code. You don't need to know everything that's possible about financial matters in order to apply the Perpetual Wealth Code. You can make it very simple. In fact, it's better if you do start very simply with right where you are right now. And that's the key when you're starting with the Perpetual Wealth Code. Where are you right now? And to break it down to the most simple terms, this is the idea behind any strategy that you apply with the Perpetual Wealth Code. Some people, when they buy things, they go into debt and then they pay it off and they come back to zero. And they repeat the process. They're always coming back to zero. They're most always in debt to somebody else. The people who pay cash reverse this on itself, and they save up, and then they come back to zero when they purchase whatever it is that they're going to buy. They repeat that over. Again, they're always coming back to zero, but unlike the people that have debt, they're actually building a little bit of something in their savings account, but they never get to keep it. And the difference with the Perpetual Wealth Code is you take this savings and we add a power play onto it so that you get to keep a little bit more of what you make every time that you make a purchase. And as we apply the Perpetual Wealth Code strategies, that is what gets your capital to be able to start growing. Obviously, the more that you're able to save, the faster you're going to be able to jumpstart this process. But if you're having a tough time saving right now, you could start out nice and slow, as long as we're building that little bit of that block of gold every single time. And it starts with knowing where you are right now. In Chapter 9, my mom wrote a chapter in Prescription for Wealth called You Are Here. Talks about looking at a kiosk when you go traveling. Shows the You Are Here sticker on the map. Whether it's a park, whether it's a mall, you often can go to this kiosk and look for the You Are Here. You open up the GPS on your iPhone. There's a little button or a little car that shows you where you are on that map. It's so important when you want to figure out how you want to get from where you are now to where you want to go. Yet many people do not know exactly where they stand financially. So you can get a copy of this book, Prescription for Wealth, on our website, life-benefits.com. That's $10 for the soft cover, or you can download the ebook for free. But we have to start where you're located now, and that's where the 10-20-70 comes in. This is one of the key principles of the Perpetual Wealth Code. You take 100% of your income, we divide it up into 10%, 20%, and 70%. But that's where the 10-20-70 comes from. The first 10% is what you should be saving at the very least. And if you haven't been saving already, then you want to save for at least 3 months to prove to yourself that you can do that sustainably, and then transfer that into a guaranteed account. And that's where the life insurance would come in that we talk about, the participating whole life insurance. Okay, this 20%, which is showing up in the red now, is the maximum amount that you should pay to creditors. Even if you have to make the minimum payment to creditors, 20% of your income should be the maximum that you put towards creditors on a regular basis. And the idea here is to use the 10% savings to self-finance the 20% in debt so that you get that money flowing back to you as soon as possible. And then the 70% are for essential expenses like mortgage, rent, insurance, car payment, food and utilities, and some non-essential expenses such as vacations and phone, cable, entertainment, and things like that. So as we take a look at this 10-20-70 rule in action, you pay money out all the time for living expenses, and that money goes out the door. You pay money to creditors if you have creditors, and that money goes out the door. But with the savings, this is the little part that you get to keep, and it comes into savings over here. Then you want to use that money to self-finance the debt, like we mentioned earlier, and then that money is able to be recycled, and your savings is effectively up to 30% without working any harder. And this is one of the first power plays that the Perpetual Wealth Code applies, because like Dad said earlier about Robert Schiller saying that people save 4 to 5% of their income and earn a 0% rate of return, the solution to that quandary is to save more. And look, we just saved more just by redirecting money that was already being spent. Okay, at this point then is when you can look at financing vacations and other things that you have to purchase to live. Okay, and you can go as deep as you want here, or you can and some people go deeper than others, but as long as you're financing things that you're working with your hands to finance, you're going to be the one making the payments. Ultimately, what we want to be able to do is to leverage your savings then to increase your income, whether that's putting it to work with your business ideas and making your business grow better, or whether it's creating outside investments. But the thing is, you always now have a solid foundation of savings to fall back on if any of those things don't work out. So I'm going to give each of you a tool that you can evaluate your 10/20/70 with. And even if you're already one of our clients, it's a good idea to revisit this 10/20/70 periodically to make sure that you're staying on target to reach the goals that you wanted to achieve. So we're going to switch over to that right now, and I'll give you an idea of how it works. I'm going to put a link into the chat box where you can go get this right now. You'll be able to click on this. We'll also email it out afterwards. So this link will take you to the page where you're able to opt in for the checklist here and for the calculator tool. It'll take you to this page, then where you pull up the calculator. And if you have Excel on your computer, I would recommend downloading this tool with the little button down in the right-hand corner that has a little arrow beside it. That way you'll be able to save it to your computer, and when you input the information, you'll be able to keep a copy of it to compare next time. If you don't have Excel on your computer, you can just go ahead and use the sheet that shows up right here in your internet browser. So what happens, we're going to switch over. I have an Excel version that's already partially loaded here, is there's two parts where we input information on this tool. First, we have one of the small boxes here in the center section. That's where you put in your income. You can do that on an annual basis like we've done here, or you can put it in on a monthly basis. If you get a monthly paycheck, put in that monthly income and just select whatever frequency works best for you here. All right, and then on the left-hand side is where you put in your expenses, and this is kind of like a budget. You put in what you're spending on different things. You can put in as many of these as you want. I think there's a limit of up to 100 that you can lines that you can put in. And you put in a little note about what each one is for. So we have some example expenses right here. These actually came from actual clients that we rounded the numbers and put in here for this example, took out their names, of course, and anything specific. So right here, we next need to assign a frequency and either a 10, a 20, or a 70 to each of these items on the budget sheet here. So right here we have term insurance, and we're not building any savings in term insurance, so that's going to be a living expense. We put it in as a 70%. And we'll do the same for auto maintenance and household. In fact, I know since I created this example earlier that everything is a 70 down until this point. So you can see as we put in these numbers, the graph over here on the right reflects what we're looking at. The bar on the left took our income and divided up automatically into 10, 20, 70. The 10 shows up in the blue, the 20 shows up in orange, and the 70% shows up in gray. This is the ideal. And now we're putting in our actual expenses, and the bar on the right is reflecting what the actual expenses look like. So now we have some debt payments over here that would fall into the 20%, and we're repaying a 401k loan that would fall into the 20%, and then we have some savings finally down here. We're going to put it in as 10, and now we get to look over here and see what our graph looks like. And you can obviously tell that we're cutting ourselves a little bit short on living expenses over here, and we're paying a lot to creditors, and we're barely saving anything at all. You can see how much out of balance that is by comparing the bar on the left and the bar on the right. Okay, you can see what the actual percentages are by looking at this value right here. You're saving 2%, 34% going to creditors, and 64% to living expenses. So you can work with your budget until you get a balanced example, or you can use this as a starting point to realize, okay, this is my "you are here" place, and now let's find out what we can do about it. And that's where we'll be able to help you here at Life Benefits to get the ideal plan to get your debts paid off and get that money flowing back to you. Here's an example of a more balanced 10, 20, 70 sheet where we have somebody is putting, they have the same amount of income, they're putting about 10% of that into life insurance premiums. Okay, and they have some auto, a lot of the same type of living expenses. They still have some debt payments, and they also have some policy loan repayments in this case. But you can just, by glancing at the graph, you can see that it's a much more balanced approach. So you can get that using the link that I put into the chat box. You'll be able to access that resource along with the quick start guide that has some of the key principles of the Perpetual Wealth Code. Now we're going to go back to the screen here, and we're going to look at some of the keys as you go to apply the Perpetual Wealth Code, some of the things that you want to be aware of. One of them is volume of interest. It's amazing how many people don't really know how compounding interest works. Albert Einstein, this smart guy, said that compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. He who understands it earns it, and he who doesn't pays it. So we want to be sure that we understand what's happening. Simple interest, people understand that usually fairly quickly. If you lend $1,000 to a friend and they're going to pay you 10% simple interest, then whether they pay you back tomorrow with an extra $100 or whether they pay you back in a year with an extra $100, they paid you 10% simple interest. It's irrespective of the time frame involved. Compound interest is a little bit different. There's a time frame involved. So if your friend is going to pay you back 10% compound interest over a year, compounded annually, then they would still pay you $100 on that $1,000 if they paid you back in a year. If they took 2 years to pay you back, then they would have to pay on $1,100 for the first year, and then they would have to take the compound interest, which is going to be a little bit more for the second year, and add it to that. Okay, so just to get a quick idea of how compound interest works, we can take a look at this example, which is showing 100% compound interest on $1. So we take $1 and 100% compound interest is another $1, so it grows to $2. And it doubles again the next month, grows to $4. Do that 20 times, you have over $1 million. Now, that's compound interest working for you, but what happens when it works against you? And to take a look at that, let's just assume that there's a 30% tax on this dollar, compounding every time on the growth. Let's say that there's just a 30% tax. What do you think that our ending number after 20 periods will be? And just go ahead and put some figures into the chat box for me. We have $1,048,000 when we're compounding at 100%. Now when we're paying a 30% tax, it's only going to be like it's compounding at 70%. How much less are we going to have? What's going to be that bottom line number? Okay. All right, and so here's the example. Only $40,642.31. That's over a 96% loss. Just because we had compound interest also working against us. Now people say, well, that's not really a realistic example, but it helps understand what's happening here. So let's look at a more realistic example. Let's look at the compounding interest on a house. $250,000 house, 5% interest over 30 years. This is an example right out of the book Prescription for Wealth that we mentioned earlier. That's a payment of $1,342 a month. And you do that for 30 years, 12 months every year, that's 360 months. So you're going to pay $483,000, some odd dollars and cents, over the course of that 30 years for your house. How much of that is interest? All we have to do is subtract $250,000 that was principal, and we find out that $233,000 of that was interest. That's 48% of all the payments that you made went to interest. That's still a pretty high volume of interest. That's what we're talking about. The annual percentage rate was only 5%. The volume was 48%. And if you refinance like most Americans do, let's say you refinance in 5 years, have the same payment, but we only made that 60 times. 20,000 is all that went to principal in the first 5 years. 60,000 went to interest. That's 75% volume of interest. So volume of interest is key to understand when you're applying the Perpetual Wealth Code. And here's how we apply it. If you're putting your own money to work, or money that you borrowed from an insurance policy to work, now a loan is no longer a liability for you because it's also an asset. So if you're making these payments to yourself, then you can be making this type of volume of interest. Now, am I recommending that you go and pay off your house using a policy loan? No, not at all. Because with interest rates so low right now, and you still get a tax deduction on a mortgage, there's a lot of better things that you can do with your money, probably than paying off a house that's going to take 30 years to recover this type of volume of interest. And so that's where the next step comes in. That's called velocity of money, and that's just a really fancy term for saying how fast are you moving your money. Because the faster you can move money, the more that you're going to be able to leverage that money working for you. And that's the next part of the Perpetual Wealth Code. And it's very closely related to what my dad often talks about, the free cash flow element of the Perpetual Wealth Code. But velocity money is slightly different. So let me draw it out for you. And we're going to come right down here. I'm going to get my pen so I can actually draw on the screen. And we're going to look at this. Let's say that you have over here the insurance company. Okay, and then we have right here the money manager account. For those of you who are new to the Perpetual Wealth Code, this is just a separate checking account that we're using down at the local bank just to keep money from getting commingled with our everyday personal account. Okay, so let's say that we built up equity here at the insurance company, and we're going to take $20,000 into this money manager account. And so now we have $20,000 in here. And that loan is at 5%. Let's say, and now we're going to take that money and we're going to go pay off a credit card that was charging us 17%. All right, so we're going to now turn around and make the payment that you were making to the credit card company. That payment comes back to your account, back under your control every single month. That's $500 a month if we're going to assume that credit card would have been paid off in 5 years. So you took $20,000, go take it, put it to the credit card, and you're paying back $500 a month. Well, 6 months goes by and you've accumulated $3,000 back here in the money manager account. That's $500 times 6. We come up with $3,000. So what can you do with this money now? Well, you could run it all over back to the insurance company over here, but we're talking about velocity of money. How quickly are you using that money again? So let's say that you have a business purchase that you need to make, and let's say that the vendor that you need to make this purchase from is going to give you a 10% discount right up front if you pay cash for this purchase instead of paying for it over the next 6 months. Well, at first glance, that looks like a flat 10% discount, and it is, but if you work out the annual percentage rate on that, it actually works out to 37.15%. And we can prove that using a rate calculator. For those of you who are into the numbers, you can go get the rate calculator from moneytools.net, download a copy of it, and you can figure out this percentage. The APR comes out to 37.15%. It is 10% volume of interest. Okay, so we take, of this $3,000, we take out $2,700, and we go pay for this purchase. And then you're going to pay, the business is going to pay you back, okay, $500 a month over the next 6 months. Well, you see, we only used $2,700 of this $3,000 over here, so that means we still had $300 left. 6 months down the road, we made another $3,000 of payments on this credit card loan. That was a 5-year loan. And 6 months later, we now have another $3,000 back here on the business loan. So now we have a total of $6,300 back here in the money manager account. Now let's say that you want to go on a vacation with your family. So we put that in here and take $5,300 of this for vacation, and you set up a repayment schedule for this. Let's say that you're going to repay this at $235 a month over 6% over the next 2 years. That's what the terms work out to on that. So again, let me get rid of this doc that popped up over here. There we go. All right, so now that leaves us with $1,000 here in the money manager account, and we're at the end of year 1. Remember, the interest on the insurance company loan was 5% for the year, and so this $1,000 comes up here and it covers the interest that goes back to the insurance company. Now let's take a look at what just happened here. Okay, first of all, we used $20,000 to pay off the credit card, and then we used $2,700 over here to make the business purchase. And then we used another $5,300 to go on vacation. So over this time here, we've used $28,000, and this has just been 12 months now. So our initial loan, though, was only $20,000. So we have increased by just using the velocity of money, we've increased the amount of money we've been able to use in the first year by 40%. It's 40% higher. And if we look at the volume of interest on each of these purchases that we're going to make by the time this loan comes in 5 years, and this one already came in, it only lasted 6 months, and by the time this one comes in 2 years, if we add up all that volume of interest, it comes up to very close, it's like 52% volume of interest that we're going to make over the next 2 to 5 years. So that's the power of the velocity of money, by being able to leverage the money more than once as we go through this process. Okay, so that's another way to look at applying the Perpetual Wealth Code in your life, and especially for people who are already using the Perpetual Wealth Code. It's good to go through this process again and to think, how can I apply the Perpetual Wealth Code to make more right now with what I'm already doing? Now, obviously, as we're looking at all of this over here on the right-hand side, it takes some tracking to make sure that you pay the loans back on time and on schedule so that the system works. And we do have systems for doing that. They're on moneytools.net. And for those of you who are at the step where you need to get a better system for tracking your loans, we're going to be doing a webinar at the end of this month, May 31st. That you can register for, and we'll be diving into that in more detail. But the process is very simple. Remember, our goal is to keep it simple and just to be able to keep that extra block of gold every time that we make a purchase in life. So you'll be able to register for that webinar also when you go to claim the gifts with the link that I put into the chat box earlier. I'm also going to put the direct link in right now so you can register for that webinar if you want to see more about the management system. Okay, and now we'll go on to talking about our goals again. So as you're thinking about your financial goals, we looked at some different ways that the Perpetual Wealth Code can be applied there. You want to be very firm on the principle and flexible on method. Sometimes when people go to set financial goals, they want to use a dollar amount that they want to have in a certain amount of time. But that's not always the best way to go about it, because patience is also a virtue. And we don't know necessarily when we're setting a goal all the things that are going to come up that we need to make changes along the route. We can make a goal today, but that might not be the way that we're going to be able to accomplish it. And so generally we find accomplishing certain things or focusing on how many people you're going to serve is a better way to go about it than to focus on a dollar amount. Because the ways that we can work towards things change, but the principles that we work towards them on should never change. Okay, so some more things that can be helpful as you're looking at setting your goals is, like Ben mentioned earlier, we always want to start with savings, and so that when you do get to the bit to invest in your business ideas or even outside investments, that you have something to fall back on if those things don't go so well. So starting with things in your personal life, things that you already know about, is one of the safest ways that you can start to maximize your savings. Then taking on business ideas, which have a little bit more risk, but things that you're still very knowledgeable about. And then finally looking at outside investments where there's more risk once you've maxed out the other areas in your life. And for different people, these times are going to come at different points in their journey generating wealth. Okay, some other points that will be helpful to consider. Of course, you want to use the 10-20-70 rule and the tool that we provided earlier to find out where you are right now. And then you also want to consider your personal goals to where you want to be. You don't want to set your financial goals without considering what you want to do in your personal life. You know, the two have to match up. I could have a goal to be the best tennis player in the world, and I might also have another goal to always eat as much as I wanted and never exercise. And that, you know, those are two goals that are not going to be attainable together at the same time. Okay, so Also talking about your personal goals, Tom Ziegler was on a teleconference with us earlier this year where we talked about a whole session about goal setting. So if you're one of our clients, you can get to that on the Team Huddle login site of our website. That's a great resource. Once you know where you are and have an idea of where you want to be, then it's great to talk with our team here at Life Benefits. You can get a strategy session. Ben will tell you more about that later, but just calling our office is one of the best ways to get started with that. Even if you're already a client, you can contact our office to talk about some ideas that you have. Okay.
That was good, John. Thank you for doing that. Can I talk you into posting the recording of this webinar on YouTube?
You sure can.
Okay. Yeah, that's something we've never done before, but I see that somebody lost connection, was hoping for a replay. Gracine mentioned to me that somebody else would like the recording because they would like their wife to be able to listen to it, and she wasn't available at the time. So for everybody on here, if you want that recording, make sure you're subscribed to the Life Benefits YouTube channel, and then you will get an email when that recording comes out, and it'll just be right there for you. You can share that with your spouse. You can watch it again, whatever it is. If you lost connection, you can catch up on the pieces you lost. Should I tell them about the strategy session and the services we wanted to give them today?
Go for it.
So what we offer for people that aren't our clients yet is a 45-minute strategy session. And some of you that are on this call, this may be your first time figuring out what is the Perpetual Wealth Code, what could it do for me. This is what you want to listen to, what I'm going to tell you next. Some of you may have been following along for a while and you're sort of wondering, boy, I should look into this more. What do I need to do next? What you really want is the strategy session. That's 45 minutes. And how you get that is you call our office, 702-660-7000, and you just talk with whoever answers the phone. You let them know, I've been looking into this for a while. I want to know a little bit more. Or, you know, I just saw the webinar today. This is great. I need to know how I get started. What's the next step? Just let them know what it is you need. And what we will do then is we'll ask you some questions, find out what your financial goals are. We'll find out where you're at right now so that we can know, here's where you're at, here's where you want to go. What can we do to help you? And then they'll take some notes on the answers you give them, the information that you give them, and then we'll put that together for you, and we'll present that to you in a 45-minute one-on-one strategy session. So just like you could see the computer screen today, you'll be able to see the computer screen on your meeting. The difference is it's not going to be several dozen people on here. It'll just be you and somebody here from our team. We'll show you what it would look like for you if you use the Perpetual Wealth Code to reach your financial goals, and then you get to make the decision. Oh, is this what is going to be a good fit for me and my family? And the answer is either yes or no. So that is perfect. For those of you that are already our clients, I'm sure I hope you know that you always have access to us. You can call, you can email anytime. Make sure you get your complimentary tickets to the Wealth Summit reserved for October 6th, 7th, and 8th, because as clients you get those complimentary. So we want to see you there, and you'll learn a lot there. If you have questions for somebody on the team, make sure you reach out to us by phone or email, and pass this webinar on to some of your friends that you've been telling about this for a long time, and trying to get them to get a meeting and see how it could work for them. Do you have any closing thoughts, Dad?
Well, thank you, Ben. I do. We always are getting people coming to us and saying, what is this going to cost me, or what are your fees, or how much, what am I going to be out if I work with you? And I just want to let people know that there's two rules that we live by here. Number one, things have to be affordable. If they're not affordable to you, you can't do it. That's just plain and simple. And so that's why we're sharing the 10-20-70 rule to help people understand what they can afford. Number two, it has to be comfortable for you. If it's not comfortable for you, you won't do it, guaranteed. You might start, but you're going to stop. And
Exactly.
The last thing we want you to do is to stop, because once you start the Perpetual Wealth Code, especially once you start in the purchase of a participating whole life insurance policy, and you stop that prematurely, you can lose money.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't want anybody to lose money. And so part of your comfortability is learning what it's all about. And that's why we do these type of webinars and these type of free events. And because why we do the podcast and why we printed our books is we want people to understand and get into a comfort zone of knowing, yes, I can afford this, and yes, this is what I want to do.
Yes, and what you said there about comfortable, if it's not comfortable, you won't do it and you'll stop doing it. For Bible-believing people, they recognize that in Jesus' words when he said, somebody who puts his hand to the plow and then looks back.
Oh, absolutely.
That's that same thing. So we want to avoid that. That's why we're so upfront with what we do and why we offer the strategy session. We offer that to you because we want to show you what we could do to help you. And then we put the decision back on you. Is this going to be a good fit for you? We want you to answer that either yes or no. If it's a yes, we'll help you. If it's a no, then we're glad we know up front. So that's the way that works.
So that's all I have for today. And,
Good.
But I always look forward to to meeting people and to talking with them over the web or the phone or meeting them at the Wealth Summit when they come, because
yes,
this has changed our lives so dramatically that everyone needs the opportunity to listen to it and get the chance to understand how powerful it is.
I couldn't agree more. Absolutely. Well, thank you for joining us this afternoon, everybody. Make sure that you're subscribed to the Life Benefits YouTube channel if you want the recording of this webinar. It was fantastic. Thank you, Dad. Thank you, John. Good information. For those of you that are looking into this and want that strategy session, make sure you call the office at 702-660-7000. We still have about an hour and a half before closing, so hopefully we can talk today. For all of you that are our clients, it's always nice to have you with us. Hopefully we'll see you at the Wealth Summit. And as always, if anything comes up, questions, comments, friends that need some information, just give us a call. We love to hear from you.